New contingents are joining the legal battle over expansion of charter schools. Last year, attorneys representing students from Boston filed a suit in federal court that calls for the cap on charter expansion to be abolished. More recently, another legal team has tried to intervene on behalf of students in the Boston Public Schools and the New England Area Conference of the NAACP. We'd like to welcome the conference president, Juan Cofield, and the director of the Education Project for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice, Matthew Cregor. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
I want to start with Juan Cofield, because if we go back to that original lawsuit filed on behalf of kids in Boston, they're saying it's our civil right to get equality of education and choice in the schools. So, they're going to say you're trying to take that away from them.
No, the NAACP stands for, it firmly believes, and has been fighting since actually before the Brown decision, has been fighting for high quality, free, public schools for all. And the emphasis is on all. And when we set up a dual school system, and that's what's happening with the charter schools, not all kids are going to be, the high quality public school is not going to be made available to all kids. And that's what really concerns us, a dual school system.
Matt, you're trying to represent students from the Boston Public Schools as an intervener in this legal challenge, and I guess you're trying to say why these students have something to lose from charter expansion. What is that?
That's right. And Chris, it doesn't matter if we're watching something before the U.S. Supreme Court or Judge Judy, right? We're used to lawsuits that involve a plaintiff and a defendant. But when a party has an interest in the outcome of a case, and that interest would be harmed if they are not allowed to participate in it, a party can move to intervene, and that's exactly what we've done in this case on behalf of students of color, English language learners, and students with disabilities who feel their educations would be harmed were the cap on charter schools declared unconstitutional in Massachusetts. And here's why. When we look at the enrollment of our charter schools across the state compared to our traditional public schools districts, our students with disabilities and our English language learners are far underrepresented as we would expect them to be in our charter schools. And that's particularly true for our English language learners with the most severe language needs and students with disabilities with the most severe needs related to their disability. And when we look at the students who are most often suspended or pushed out of these schools, we see students of color who get suspended at egregious rates, right? At a time when we know that these students are far more likely to drop out of school or be retained a grade with that sort of treatment.
Well, in Cofield, we've heard about this for quite a while now, students of color being disproportionately disciplined in charter schools, but we've also heard something like that in the district schools too. So, I mean, is there much difference?
Yeah, there is, in fact, and that is true. There has been a disproportionate treatment, a disciplinary action taken against kids of color in the traditional public schools. That's well documented. However, in the charter schools, that rate is exponentially larger than in the traditional public schools.
When we looked at this in Massachusetts, and in Boston in particular, the discipline rate for our students as a city was around 6%. When we looked at the charter schools in Boston alone, the rate skyrocketed to 17%, right? And so that year, Boston Public Schools suspended out of school about 9% of its black students. One charter school in Boston, for example, suspended over 60% of its black students. And so there's a pattern there that we're very, very concerned about.
What about that, Pat? I mean, because aren't there other ways to set up a charter school, or run it differently, and still get effective results? And why don't we see as much of that?
The NAACP does not think so. Again, I'm coming back to a dual school system. Charter schools were initially established as training laboratories for traditional public schools in which best practices would be translated through the educational program, the state, to improve all traditional schools. That has never been done. It makes you wonder if that was the original intent, or if that was just said to make people feel good. But what we know is that the training component or communicating best practices by and large in a formal way has not taken place. Having dual school systems doesn't serve, the NAACP firmly believes that having dual school systems opens the door for inherent differences in those school systems. And we say that there should only be one school system, and we should try our darndest to make sure that we're providing as much in the way of resources, both financial resources and intellectual resources, that we can for that single school system to make it the best that we can do.
Matt, there's a question here that really goes for both sides, and for your side is here, why engage in a legal challenge over the quantity of charter schools or the seats in charter schools as opposed to just challenging these practices that you think need to be fixed?
So this is somebody else's challenge, right? This is a lawsuit filed to lift the cap on charter schools by declaring it unconstitutional. And we're working to intervene on behalf of those who feel their educations would be harmed were the plaintiffs to succeed in it. Now, I think there are two answers to your question, right? One is we have been working. We've been working to make sure that as a state we follow the recruitment and retention requirements we've placed on charter schools to make them better reflect the cities that they serve, so that we should see students with disabilities and English language learners served at proportionate rates. That's not happening, and that's not happening in part because our State Board of Education has not been holding our charter schools accountable to it. We'll continue to make that push, right? Because that's important. But the bigger picture here is that funding in Massachusetts for education and anything else is a zero-sum game. We have limited resources, and if we choose to rob Peter to pay Paul, we know what we're doing, right? And when our traditional public schools disproportionately serve the students who've been pushed out of charters, who've had a negative experience, the English language learners, or the students with disabilities who were never made welcome in the first place, we are shrinking the resources that belong to ensure that those students receive a quality education.
Juan Cofield, I mean, talk about the funding consequences here, because if you allow more charter school expansion, what happens?
The expansion of the charter schools will come at the expense of the traditional public schools.
The district schools.
The district schools, because the total cost of funding those schools is not borne by the state. It comes from a proportion, a reimbursement formula from the district schools. And it is not a full reimbursement. And I guess the greatest evidence of that is the latest bill that the governor submitted to the legislature, which was supposed to be addressing that issue, and they fully admit that it doesn't fully reimburse the district schools. And when we do that, we are making the situation worse for traditional public schools. They've got less funds now to carry out the educational program that they should be, and most school districts will tell you that they don't have all of the financial resources that they would have even if this charter reimbursement was not a part of the equation. Look at the Boston Public Schools. $50 million, the superintendent announced that it would be short in this year, which is a real problem. And to take more funds from these district schools to give to the charter schools just exacerbates the problem.
Now, what about the students you're representing? Anything you can tell me about them?
We are representing several high school students who are by no means cheerleaders for the Boston Public Schools, but have stood up for the equal rights to a quality education for their peers. We are also representing a group of younger English language learners, some of whom are what are considered level 1 or level 2, those English language learners who have the most severe needs and the greatest need for sheltered English immersion programs. One of those students is also a student with disabilities, and their experiences in trying to make sure that they get the education that their children deserve hits a barrier in terms of the capacity of the district with the limited funds it has to adequately serve all the populations it faces, all of the different language groups that make up our great city, and reflect to us the fact that even in a state that is as devoted to funding public education as Massachusetts is, these are very limited resources, and we have needs in our communities that were unfathomed by our original education funding laws, right? And it's going to be up to us to figure out solutions that work for all of our children. We don't dispute that there are children who have found an educational home in charter schools. If we're going to find solutions that work and last for all the children in the Commonwealth, we have to start by making sure those who are least enfranchised and those with the greatest needs are being met.
Thank you both very much, Matt Cregor and Juan Cofield.